All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a massive question. What even is the self? We're going to connect some pretty different dots here. Cutting-edge AI, the actual wiring of your brain, and even the deep, slow grind of evolution to try and figure out what it really means to be, well, you. So let's kick things off right here in the present day. There's this new wave of tech that's all about helping us manage our own minds. This, for example, is from a company, Flourish Psychiatry, and they're building an AI coach specifically for people with ADHD. The whole idea is to give you this constant, supportive feedback that makes you feel heard and in control, helping you build a stronger sense of who you are and what you can do. And right away, you hit this enormous question. I mean, if we're building all this amazing technology to support and manage and strengthen the self, what exactly is the self we're talking about? Is it just a bundle of habits, the story we tell ourselves about our life? Or is it something more real, something we can actually point to? So, how does an AI coach like this actually work? Well, it's way more than just a fancy alarm clock. It uses real therapeutic ideas, like reflective listening. So instead of just nagging you, it might say something like, "It sounds like focus has been a real challenge this week." You see? It prompts you to think for yourself. The goal here isn't just to patch up symptoms, it's to help build a more solid, coherent sense of self from the inside out. Okay, so if an AI is coaching our self, what's it actually interacting with inside our skulls? Let's pop the hood and go from the software to the hardware. To really get a grip on the self, we have to look at how the brain is physically built to create it in the first place. So, neuroscientists have actually found it. There's this system in the brain that lights up whenever your mind isn't focused on a task, when you're just daydreaming or thinking about yourself. It's called the default mode network, or DMN. And you can pretty much think of it as the neurological home of your ego. It's the brain's own storyteller, constantly weaving together your past, present, and future into the story of me. Now, this gets really interesting with a theory called the entropic brain. It basically says our consciousness has two main flavors. Over on the right, you've got our normal, everyday waking state. It's organized, it's logical, it's low entropy. Your ego, your DMN, is the boss. But then over on the left, you have primary consciousness. And this is a much more chaotic, high-entropy, dreamlike state. Here, thinking is wild and free, and the ego's grip gets a whole lot weaker. So that leads to a really fascinating question, doesn't it? We spend almost our entire lives in that orderly state, with a strong self running the show. But what can we actually learn about the self by looking at moments when that control system, that DMN, gets temporarily taken offline? You know, what happens when the CEO of the brain decides to take a vacation? And this is where modern neuroscience gives us this absolutely incredible window into the mind. By studying the effects of psychedelic compounds like psilocybin in super-controlled clinical settings, researchers can safely and temporarily push the brain into that primary consciousness state and just watch what happens to the self. And what they found is just staggering. Look at this chart. Under the influence of psilocybin, activity in that default mode network, the me network, absolutely plummets. The very system that holds our ego together doesn't just get a little fuzzy, it becomes disorganized. It effectively, temporarily disintegrates. And this right here is the smoking gun. It connects the biology directly to the experience. What this quote is saying, in plain English, is that the more the DMN activity dropped, the more intensely people reported the feeling of their self or their ego completely dissolving. So the main takeaway is huge. Our sense of self isn't just some vague idea. It is a measurable biological process, and it's tied directly to this one brain network. Okay, so everything seems to be pointing to the idea that a strong, stable self is the goal, right? But what if that's not the whole story? Could there possibly be a hidden benefit to that less organized, more chaotic state of mind? Could a more flexible, less rigid sense of self, could that actually be an advantage somehow? Now, for the last piece of this wild puzzle, we need to turn to evolution. Because it turns out there's a pretty shocking link between the personality traits for a more flexible mind and one of the most powerful forces in biology, reproductive success. So to investigate this, scientists look at a set of personality traits called schizotypy. Now, these traits, things like having unusual perceptions or thinking in more magical ways, they exist on a spectrum. At the far, far end, they can be related to psychosis, but in smaller, non-clinical doses, you find them all the time in highly creative people, artists, poets, musicians.
It's basically that unconstrained cognition we were talking about earlier.
So researchers asked a pretty blunt question. Do these creative type traits have any effect on mating success? And you have to see this. This table is from a study of a few hundred British adults, and it is remarkable. It shows that two of these schizotypal traits, unusual experiences and impulsive nonconformity, were positively correlated with how many sexual partners a person had. And on the flip side, a trait linked to social withdrawal was, unsurprisingly, negative. But here is the most important part of the whole study. For that unusual experiences trait, the connection wasn't direct. It's not like the trait itself was inherently attractive. No, the trait led people to do more creative things, write poetry, paint, make music, and it was that creative output that led to more mating success. The creativity itself is like a brilliant mating display, and it's fueled by a mind that's a little less rigid.
And boom, this gives us a potential solution to a huge evolutionary puzzle. It suggests that the very same genes or traits that, in an extreme case, might lead to the downsides of mental illness can, in a different context, provide a massive reproductive advantage through creativity. The evolutionary scales just balance out.
So let's bring it all home. We started with an AI coach designed to manage and strengthen the self. We then dove into the brain to find where the self lives, saw how it can be temporarily taken apart, and then discovered a deep evolutionary reason for why a more flexible self might exist in the first place. What really emerges from all of this is a view of consciousness not as one single thing, but as a dynamic spectrum. On one far end, you have extreme, rigid order, like what you might see in conditions like OCD or depression. On the other far end, you have flexible chaos, the state of high creativity or the psychedelic experience. And the healthy mind? It seems to live in that perfect critical balance, that sweet spot right in between.
So, what are the big takeaways? Well, first, our sense of self isn't just some philosophical idea. It's a real, tangible biological process run by a specific network in your brain. Second, the dominance of that network can be turned down, pushing the mind into a more flexible, chaotic, and often creative state. And third, and this is the real mind vendor, that very flexibility, that weaker ego, was likely sculpted and kept around by evolution because it fuels the creativity that helps us find a mate. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty profound question to chew on. We spend so much time thinking the goal is to build a stable, solid, unshakable self. But maybe the real genius of the human mind isn't its stability at all, but its incredible, razor-sharp ability to navigate that delicate, dynamic, and fantastically creative edge right between order and chaos.